Welcome back to the deep dive. So, today I want you to just mentally pack your bags.
Oh, we are going on a trip.
We are, but, and I need to be really clear about this up front, do not pack your flip-flops.
Right.
Do not pack your sunscreen for a day at the beach. And definitely don't expect a pina colada by the pool.
No. If you're packing for today's trip, I mean, you need rubber boots.
Yeah.
Ideally the ones that go all the way up to your knees.
Exactly. Because we are heading to the Caribbean coast of Colombia. Now, that usually conjures up images of, white sand and turquoise water.
A standard tropical vacation.
Right. But we are taking a hard left turn into something much denser and much darker and, frankly, just much more fascinating. We're heading straight into the swamps.
The best kind of detour.
It really is. Specifically, we're looking at a place with a title that just demands respect. It's the Hermano Hernández Cork Forest Flora and Fauna Sanctuary.
It is quite a mouthful of a name, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Santuario de Fauna y Flora el Corchal Hermano Hernández. And I am really glad you emphasized the sanctuary part there.
Yeah, it's important.
Because this isn't a park where you just go to play Frisbee or have a picnic. It's actually a designated natural monument.
Which is a distinction that really stood out to me in the research. Natural monument. I mean, it sounds like a statue or some giant rock formation.
Like a monolith.
Yeah, exactly. But here we are talking about a living, breathing, wet ecosystem.
Yeah.
So why that specific classification?
Well, it really comes down to rarity. So in the conservation world, you have your national parks, which are usually these massive areas that protect entire sweeping landscapes.
Right.
But a natural monument, and this is under the IUCN classification, so that's the International Union for Conservation of Nature, a natural monument is usually much smaller.
Okay.
It's a Category 3 protected area, which essentially means, hey, this specific thing right here, it's totally unique. It is a landmark. And if we lose this, we lose a very specific chapter of biological history.
So the mission of this deep dive is to really figure out what that monument actually is.
Yeah.
Because on the surface, I mean, it just looks like 38.5 square kilometers of swamp sitting right on the border of the Sucre and Bolívar departments.
Just a patch of mud and water to the untrained eye.
Right. But hidden inside that swamp is this botanical secret that literally exists nowhere else in the Caribbean region.
That is the real hook here. It's a total biological anomaly. But actually, before we get to the trees in the swamp, we have to talk about the name.
Oh, yeah, we do.
Because Hermano Hernández is just this fascinating entry point into the whole history of Colombian conservation.
Okay, let's definitely unpack this.
Okay.
Because I speak a little bit of Spanish. You know, I ordered a beer in Mexico once.
Very impressive.
Thank you. And I know that mono means monkey.
It does, yes.
So naturally, when I first saw the name, I thought, great, we're going to a sanctuary named after a specific monkey.
Right, like a local primate.
Yeah, maybe a golden lion tamarin or some special howler monkey local to the Caribbean. But then I dug into the source material, and it turns out El Moto was a human being.
He was very much a human being. Jorge Ignacio Hernández-Camacho.
Okay.
And this is actually a great example of cultural context. Because down in Colombia, mono is a really common nickname.
But it doesn't mean you look like a monkey.
No, not at all. It's often used for people who have lighter skin or lighter hair, so rubio.
Ah, I got it.
It's just a term of endearment.
Okay, so it's kind of like calling a redhead red or a really tall guy tiny.
Yeah.
It's just a nickname that stuck with him.
Exactly. But in this case, that nickname belonged to an absolute titan.
Yeah, the sources made that very clear.
Jorge Ignacio Hernández-Camacho was born in 1935, and he wasn't just a casual fan of nature. He was arguably the primary architect of how Colombia actually protects its environment.
Wow.
He was this brilliant naturalist who helped found the entire natural park system of Colombia.
Which is just a massive legacy. I mean, we aren't just talking about a guy who liked birdwatching on the weekends. We are talking about the guy who literally drew the conservation lines on the map.
Precisely. He spent his entire life cataloging biodiversity and identifying these critical ecosystems, and more importantly, fighting for the legal framework to actually keep them safe.
Because you can't just hope a forest stays untouched.
Right. He understood that you can't just hope nature survives. You have to legislate it. You have to build legal walls around it.
And the timeline here is actually pretty poignant, because he passed away in 2001.
He did, and this sanctuary was established on August 5th, 2002.
So just barely a year later.
Exactly.
Meaning that naming this place El Mono Hernández wasn't just some branding exercise by a committee, it was a memorial.
It was the ultimate tribute, really. Imagine spending your life building a system to protect the planet, and then right after you're gone, your country takes this piece of land, a piece of land that is scientifically irreplaceable, and says, this is yours. We are putting your name on the map permanently.
It genuinely gives me goosebumps. It changes the way you look at a map. It's not just geography anymore, it's biography.
That's a great way to put it.
But you mentioned earlier that this land is scientifically irreplaceable. So let's get our boots dirty. Let's get into the mud. What exactly is the corchal?
The corchal, yes. This is why we are here. The word translates to cork forest.
Now, see, when I hear cork, I immediately think of wine bottles.
Sure, most people do.
I think of Portugal and those oak trees where they gently peel the bark off the trunk.
Right, and that is the most common association. But the cork forest we are talking about here is completely different. We are not talking about the cork oak, which is Quercus super.
Yeah.
We are talking about a totally different tree called Pterocarpus officinalis.
Pterocarpus officinalis. That sounds almost medical.
Well, the officinalis part often implies a medicinal history in botany, but the common name you'll usually hear for it in English is the dragon's blood tree or bloodwood.
Bloodwood. Okay,
Yeah.
That is way more metal than cork. Why on earth do they call it bloodwood?
Because if you cut the bark, it actually bleeds.
It bleeds.
Yeah, it exudes this thick, really dark red resin. It looks incredibly visceral, like the tree is actually bleeding.
That is such a vivid and slightly terrifying image. So we have this bleeding tree in the swamp. But the sources highlight that the actual arrangement of these trees is the real mystery here. They keep referring to them as pure forests.
And this is the real aha moment for any ecologist listening. Because in the tropics, especially in rainforests or these complex wetlands, monoculture is almost a dirty word.
Because everything is usually so mixed together.
Exactly. Usually you have this incredible diversity. You might find 10 completely different species of tree in just a 10 square meter plot. Nature in the tropics rarely does the exact same thing twice in a row.
Right, diversity is basically the defining hallmark of the tropics.
But here inside the El Mono Hernandez Sanctuary, you have these massive homogeneous stands of just Pterocarpus officinalis, nothing else.
Miles of bloodwood.
About 401 hectares of them, to be exact. It's like walking into this massive biological cathedral where every single pillar is identical.
Which is huge. I mean, 401 hectares is roughly 400 football fields of just this one type of tree. So how does that even happen in nature?
Well, it is all about extreme adaptation. You have to remember, this area is a swamp.
Right.
It's not quite the open sea, and it's not quite a freshwater river. It is this harsh transition zone where fresh water from the inland rivers collides with the salty influence of the Caribbean.
So it's brackish.
Highly brackish and fluctuating. It is a really tough neighborhood for a tree. Most normal trees would either rot from being submerged in the water, or they would just die from the salt content.
So the Pterocarpus is basically the special forces unit that can survive those specific conditions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They have evolved these massive, winding buttress roots. Think of them almost like the stabilizing fins on a rocket.
Okay.
They spread way out to stabilize the heavy tree and the soft shifting mud. And they have just evolved to perfectly handle this specific hydro period. So they naturally crowd out all the competition because, frankly, nothing else can handle the stress of that specific environment quite like they can.
And the source material says this is the absolutely only place in the entire Colombian Caribbean where you find these pure stands.
The only one left. There definitely used to be more of them historically, but through deforestation and agricultural expansion, they have basically been wiped out.
Wow.
Which is exactly why this got that natural monument status. It is the last remaining stronghold of the pure bloodwood cork forest.
That image is just incredible to picture. Floating through a dark swamp surrounded by these bleeding trees with massive rocket fin roots. It feels prehistoric.
It really does.
But we can't fully talk about the swamp without talking about the other half of the vegetation, because despite the fame of the cork, the mangroves are actually a massive part of this.
The mangroves are really the unsung heroes here. They actually cover about half of the total area of the sanctuary, mostly in the western and northern parts.
I feel like mangroves generally get a bad rap. People just think of them as these smelly, buggy, impenetrable thickets.
Yeah.
But the notes here list 4 very specific types found in the sanctuary. We've got red, black, white, and buttonwood. Is there a specific reason for that variety, or is it just random seeds floating around?
Oh, it is definitely not random. It is highly, highly organized. You should think of it almost like a well-planned city. The mangroves strictly respect these natural zoning laws based entirely on the water depth and the salinity.
Okay, walk me through these zones. Who gets the prime waterfront property?
The red mangrove is your absolute front line. That's Rhizophora mangle.
Are those ones with the crazy roots above the water?
Yes, the ones you see on postcards with those big arching prop roots that look like giant spider legs dropping straight down into the water.
Right.
They live right there in the active tidal zone. They physically break the incoming waves, and their roots trap the sediment floating in the water. They are literally building new land out into the ocean.
Okay, so the red mangroves are the infantry building the beachhead. Who is sitting right behind them?
Behind them, usually on slightly more stable ground, but still very wet, you have the black mangrove, Avicennia germinans, and these guys are amazing because they have what we call pneumatophores.
Semanophores. That is a fantastic Scrabble word.
It is. It essentially translates to breathing roots. Because the mud they live in is so thick and completely lacks oxygen, the black mangrove has to send up these little snorkel roots.
Snorkel roots.
Yeah, they stick straight up out of the mud looking exactly like thousands of little pencils sticking up. They literally snorkel for air above the suffocating mud.
That is wild. It's like the tree is holding its breath underwater and sticking a straw up to the surface.
Precisely. And then as you move further back into slightly drier, slightly less salty territory, you get the white mangrove and the buttonwood. They prefer to have drier feet, so to speak.
That makes perfect sense.
But the larger point here is that this specific diversity, having all four types working together, tells us that the ecosystem is incredibly robust. Under the administration of CNAP, the National Natural Park System, they're protecting a system that filters the river water before it hits the ocean. It tracks massive amounts of carbon. It protects the coastline from storm surges.
So it is essentially a giant biological sponge.
A sponge and a highly active nursery. Which brings us perfectly to the actual residents of the sanctuary, because you can't have a house this big and this complex without tenants moving in.
And looking at the notes, the tenant list here is genuinely impressive. We've got 153 different species of birds.
153, yes.
I mean, I have a pretty nice bird feeder in my backyard, and I get maybe 3 types of sparrows and 1 very aggressive squirrel. Why is this specific 38 square kilometer patch of swamp attracting 153 different bird species?
It boils down to one simple thing. Calories.
So it's just a giant buffet.
It is an all-you-can-eat buffet that never ever closes. The sheer combination of the mangroves constantly dropping leaves, the warm swamp water breaking those leaves down rapidly, and that constant mixing of fresh and salt water creates an absolute explosion of plankton, algae, and small crustaceans.
The water is basically soup at that point.
It is a nutrient-dense soup, so the small fish eat the soup. The bigger fish eat the small fish. And the birds, the herons, the egrets, the kingfishers, they capitalize on all of that, whether they are wading in the shallows or diving down from the canopy. The food density here is just off the charts.
But it's not just birds, right? There's a specific mammal here that I think captures the imagination more than anything else we've talked about, the West Indian manatee.
Ah, yes, the gentle giant of the swamp.
See, I always associate manatees with Florida, hanging out near power plants in the winter. I didn't realize they were such a key feature of these deep Colombian swamps.
They are completely critical to the ecosystem, and unfortunately they are highly endangered. The overall population in the Caribbean is severely fragmented, so finding a pristine sanctuary like El Mono Hernández, where they are actively protected, is vital for their survival.
But why are they here specifically? Is it also because of the soup?
For them, it's the salad. Manatees are strict herbivores. They are basically aquatic cows. They need massive, massive amounts of aquatic plants, floating grasses, water hyacinths, just to sustain their sheer bulk.
And the swamp just naturally provides the lawn for them to mow.
Exactly. The complex marshes within the sanctuary provide perfect grazing grounds. But here is the fascinating part. It's a deeply symbiotic relationship.
Oh, so?
By constantly grazing, the manatees actively keep the waterways open. They physically prevent the fast-growing vegetation from choking out the flow of water. If you lose the manatee population, the actual architecture of the swamp changes. The channels would clog right up.
Oh, wow. So they aren't just living there. They are the gardeners.
They are the heavy machinery of the swamp's maintenance crew.
I love that.
Yeah.
But if the manatee is the gentle gardener, there is another resident we need to talk about that is significantly less gentle, the jaguar.
The undisputed king of the sanctuary?
This detail really blew my mind, because I know jaguars are flexible predators. I know their range extends from Mexico all the way down to Argentina, but I always picture them in dry, deciduous forests or deep, dense canopy jungles. I do not picture a massive cat swimming through a dense mangrove swamp.
That is actually a very common misconception about big cats, specifically jaguars. They absolutely love the water. They're incredibly powerful swimmers, and they will actively hunt in the water.
Wait, they hunt in the swamp water? What are they hunting?
Oh, absolutely. They hunt caiman.
They hunt crocodiles. Well, caimans.
Yes. The jaguar actually has the strongest bite force of all the big cats relative to its size. They can effortlessly crack a turtle shell or bite straight through a caiman skull.
That completely reframes this entire ecosystem for me.
Sure.
So you have the manatee grazing peacefully in the channels, and then right nearby you have the jaguar patrolling the water's edge, fully capable of diving in to take down an armored reptile.
It really just shows you how rich the available energy is in this system. An apex predator like a jaguar requires a ton of fuel to survive. It can't just live on a few bugs and frogs. If a jaguar population is living there, it guarantees that the underlying population of prey, the capybaras, the caimans, the smaller mammals, is incredibly healthy. The jaguar is the ultimate biological indicator of a thriving ecosystem.
And speaking of those caimans, the brown caiman is specifically listed here as a key reptile resident.
Caiman crocodilus fuscus, yes. They are the subaquatic rulers of the sanctuary. Between them and the jaguars, the water is definitely a swim-at-your-own-risk zone.
I will leave my swimsuit at home.
Uh-huh.
And just to close the loop on the wildlife, we have to mention the howler monkey.
We definitely do.
Because the park is named El Mono after a man, but the actual monos, the howler monkeys, are physically right there up in the trees screaming their heads off.
It is a beautiful, poetic coincidence, and if you have never heard a wild howler monkey vocalize, Zara, it is a genuinely terrifying sound.
How would you describe it for someone who hasn't heard it?
Well, it doesn't sound anything like a typical monkey. It sounds more like a wind tunnel or a roaring predator. It is this deep, guttural, resonant roar that can literally travel for miles through the dense forest.
So just imagine the absolute sensory overload of being there. You are sitting in a canoe. It's incredibly hot. The water around you is dark and full of caimans. You have this red sap literally bleeding from the massive tree roots. And then overhead, you hear this demonic roaring echoing through the canopy.
It is atmospheric, to say the very least.
Which is a perfect pivot.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that atmosphere, because we can describe the animals and the trees all day, but I want the listener to really feel what it's like to stand there. What is the physical climate doing to us while we are in the sanctuary?
Well, first and foremost, you are going to be sweating profusely.
The notes say the average temperature is 28 degrees Celsius, so that's what, about 82 Fahrenheit?
Yes, but remember, that is the average. That includes the dead of night. During the day, with the direct sun and the humidity, the actual feels-like temperature is going to be significantly higher. And because it's a coastal swamp, the humidity is frequently hovering right near 100%.
So it's like walking through soup.
Exactly. The air feels physically thick, you breathe it in, and it just feels heavy in your lungs.
And what about the rainfall? Because swamps obviously need water.
They get about 1,100 millimeters of precipitation annually, but it isn't evenly spread out. It is very rhythmic, and this is crucial to understand because the swamp essentially breathes with the seasons.
So when do we need to bring the heavy-duty umbrella?
April and November, those are your absolute peak wet months. The skies just open up with these torrential tropical downpours. The water levels rise drastically. The salinity drops because of all the fresh river water rushing in. And the fish populations move much further inland into the flooded forests.
Okay, and the warmest months?
June and July are typically the hottest, but the real shift is the dry season.
When is that?
That runs from December straight through April. During this time, the water actively recedes. The exposed mud dries out and starts to crack in the heat. And obviously, the salt concentration in the remaining water shoots up.
Wow.
This constant oscillation, wet to dry, fresh to salty, that is the actual engine that drives the whole sanctuary. The plants and the animals are all deeply adapted to this specific pulse.
It sounds honestly exhausting just trying to survive there.
It is an extreme environment. But that is exactly why it is so special. It naturally filters out the weak. Only the highly specialized can survive here long term.
So bringing this all back together, we have this 38.5 square kilometer patch of land spanning Sucre and Bolívar. It's a natural monument. It is a literal memorial to El Mono Hernández. It holds the only pure bloodwood cork forest left. But why does all this matter to you, the listener, who might just be driving to work or doing the dishes right now?
I think it really matters on two distinct levels. First is the strictly practical level. This specific swamp acts as a giant kidney for the entire region. It filters the water flowing out to the sea. It physically holds the coastline together against storms. It actively sequesters immense amounts of carbon down in that deep peat-like mud.
So it's protecting us globally.
Right. If you destroy this, you degrade the entire surrounding coastline. The local fisheries would collapse, the coastal erosion would speed up. It is vital functional infrastructure for the planet.
And what's the second level?
The second level is about our concept of heritage. We are so used to thinking of heritage solely as old buildings or ancient cathedrals or marble statues. But a pure stand of pterocarpus trees that has managed to exist in balance for thousands of years, that is heritage.
It's essentially a living biological library.
Exactly. And once you burn down a library, you can't just go out and buy the books back. They are gone forever. This sanctuary preserves a genetic lineage that is utterly unique to the Colombian Caribbean.
And that beautifully connects right back to the man it's named after.
Yeah.
Jorge Ignacio Hernández-Camacho didn't just look out and see a muddy swamp. He saw that exact library. He recognized the profound value of the books inside it before anyone else did.
And because of him, he ensured that we can still read those books today. I think that is the real power of individuals in conservation. We tend to think of saving the planet as this vague, massive global effort, but so often it actually comes down to just one passionate person looking at one specific patch of land and saying, no, this stays, this is important.
It really does make you completely rethink the maps we use every day. We just see borders and roads and city names. But behind every single one of those lines, there are intense stories.
Every protected area on a map is a victory story. Someone had to fight for it to be there.
So here is a final provocative thought to leave you with today. If you had to designate a natural monument in your own life, a place that isn't necessarily famous or grand, but is totally vital to the ecosystem of your personal world, what would it be? And who would be the El Mono in your life that fought to protect it?
That is a genuinely great question to think about.
It's definitely worth a ponder. But we are going to wrap it up right there. Thank you for putting on your rubber boots and trekking through the deep mud with us today.
It was a pleasure. Stay dry out there.
We will see you on the next deep dive. Stay curious.